I'm going to show you how you can make graphs and forms and charts on any typewriter. I want you to see a technique for typing envelopes, not one at a time, but a whole handful at once, using a mass production technique. And then I'll demonstrate to you how you can type on the smallest piece of paper, even as small as a business card, without having it twist or turn in the typewriter. And then I'll teach you how to make cleaner, better corrections than you've ever made before. And before this program ends, you'll see the very latest development in typewriter engineering. The typewriter of tomorrow, today. But right now, you should ask yourself, am I using my typewriter to its fullest advantage? Now, I know this will be fundamental for some of you. Quiz anyway. First of all, what are the three basic essentials to good typing? How'd you do? If you said correct posture, hand position, and keystroke, you're right. Look at this typist. You'll notice that her feet are not wrapped around the legs of her chair, but rather are flat on the floor where they're always supposed to be. The chair supports her across the small of the back, and in this manner is actually helping her do part of the work. Notice her hands. They're poised comfortably aboard in a normal, naturally curved hand position. For proper typing posture, it is important that the slope of the typist's forearm, from fingertips to elbow, be closely parallel to the slope of the typewriter keyboard. The slope of the keyboard should be parallel to the slope of the forearm. The term that is commonly used to describe proper keystroking on the electric typewriter is tapping the keys. We lightly and quickly tap the keys on the electric to get maximum speed and accuracy, and it gives us quick key release. On the manual typewriter, the term that's used for proper keystroking is snapping the keys. By snapping the keys, it encourages speed and accuracy and still gives the slope of the typist's forearm closely parallels the slope, and her hands are still in that normal, naturally curved hand position. Every typewriter is equipped with a set of service and control keys. Keys that are just as important to you as any of the alphabetic keys on the keyboard. Do you know where these are on your typewriter? Can you use them automatically and without hesitation? Take the margin, for instance. Now, we all know how to set and change margins. But do we use that right-hand margin for its intended purpose? The right-hand margin is supposed to be a signal that we are approaching a preset position at the right-hand side of the page. And when that bell rings, there is no reason to look up. You've heard the bell. Just return and type another line. If you want to type through the right-hand margin or type beyond the right-hand margin, or the left-hand margin for that matter, the margin release key will enable you to do so. The tab key and tab stops on your typewriter are designed to move you quickly to a preset position on the page. This saves you reaching up and moving the carriage manually or spacing into that position. So if you're typing columns of work, set a tab stop and then use it. The space bar and the backspace on your typewriter are there simply to give you keyboard control of the carriage, so you don't have to reach up and move the carriage by hand. On the carriage of every typewriter, there is a paper release lever. Now, it's there to enable you to quickly and easily lift completed typewritten work out of the typewriter rather than pulling it out or ripping it out. It also will assist you in repositioning the paper to make additions or type corrections. There are other control keys on your typewriter, but the important thing is that you know where they are and that you acquaint yourself with them through constant use. One of the most common uses of the typewriter is for typing personal letters because it's faster, it's easier, and let's not kid ourselves, others can read them more easily too. And you know, a typewritten personal letter can reveal your personality to the same degree as a handwritten one. There are many forms of personal letters that one can use. I would like to show you two. This first one serves the informal situation, where you're typing a personal letter to a close friend. This is the Dear Mary from Jane or Dear Joe from Bob type letter. You can see all that is required is the date in the upper right-hand section and simply your signature at the bottom of the page. In this letter form, we have indented 5 spaces at the beginning of each paragraph. For the more formal situation, where you might be writing to a business associate, personal basis, or someone you don't know quite so well, you would perhaps use this letter form. You'll notice we're using a complementary close, and then below your signature, we have typed the full name and address of the addressee. Here we use a fully blocked form, and all of these items, with the exception of the date, begin in the left-hand margin. Both of these letter forms are highly acceptable, and I hope they help you when you're writing personal letters. Many times we don't make carbon copies when we're typing personal letters, but you secretaries know that typing carbon copies is a typical part of your job. So when you have several carbon copies to make, there are these points to consider. First of all, select the proper carbon paper for the job. You know, carbon papers differ widely as to weight and intensity, and it's very important that you use one designed for the application that you're going to do. Ask the man who supplies you with your carbon paper for his recommendation. And once you have selected the right carbon, it's important that you treat it with care. Don't leave single sheets of carbon on top of the desk, especially with the carbon face up, because this encourages rolling or curling. And certainly don't leave carbon in the open, direct sunlight, and don't put a box of carbon on top of the radiator that might be conveniently adjacent to your typewriter, because these exposures to extreme temperature are certain to the life of the carbon. And it won't be as clean or easy to handle either. If you want to get maximum life from your carbon paper, it's important to rotate it in the carbon pack. By that I mean rotate it end for end, from top to bottom, so the place where the name and address is typed doesn't always come in the same spot on the carbon. And we know that the carbon paper that's directly behind the original copy gets more wear than the one that's at the back of the pack. So rotate them from front to back and back to front when you're typing copies, and this way you will get even carbon wear. Well, now that we've selected the right carbon, and we know how to take care of it, let's look at the best method for getting the carbon pack in the typewriter. Take the original and the copy paper without carbons, and with the paper bale back, drop them in behind the platen. Space the platen one space. You'll notice that this holds the paper firmly in place. Now let's put in the carbon. Drop the carbon in between the sheets of paper, being certain that the carbon side is toward you. You know, if I had used this method a couple of years ago, when I was typing up some income tax forms in a hurry, I wouldn't have gotten into the problem that I did. After typing all of those numbers, filling out the forms, I took out the forms and found out that I didn't have a carbon copy, but rather all of the numbers were on the back of the original. I'd gotten the carbon in backwards. If you use this method, you can be sure that that won't happen to you. Once you have all the carbons inserted, bring the paper up into typing position, and it's a good idea to move the paper release forward and then back. It has an ironing action on the pack. Well, if you have selected the right carbon paper, and if you've taken proper care of it, and if you use this technique to get it in your typewriter, then your carbon copies should never look like this. For many of us, the only time we don't have to be concerned about typing mistakes is when we're not typing. But it's good to know when that mistake does happen that there is a way you can make a clean correction. A correction that's hardly noticeable, and here's how. First of all, when you detect an error, move the typewriter carriage to the extreme left or the extreme right and roll the paper up several spaces, so the erasure crumbs won't fall down in the typewriter. problem with making erasures is that the surface ink, the excess ink, tends to smear on the page when you rub it with the eraser. Well, we propose solving that problem by using plastic type cleaner. This is a pliable, putty-like material that you may be acquainted with. It's available in any stationery store and was originally intended to clean the face of the type. But we use it for making corrections. Take a clean segment of type cleaner and form it out to a tapered point. Then take that point and press it firmly on the letter that you want to erase. Reform the point slightly and again press it on that letter. And after you do this several times, you will see that it has actually lifted off the excess ink, and now you're ready to make a clean erasure. Use the same technique on your carbon copies. You will find that it works equally well. Once you have used the type cleaner, you're ready to make your erasure using your eraser shield. And then before you bring the typewriter back up into position to type, turn it down below the typing line and bring it back up into place using the carriage return, and then space into the right spot. In this way, there's no guessing but what you're in the right place. One of the annoying things when you're typing carbon copies is as you get near to the bottom of the page, the original copy begins to slip or to twist. Let me show you how to prevent that slippage. When you're typing about halfway down the page, take a single sheet of paper and insert it at the back of the pack. Now, the exact place where you put this is important, so watch closely. Put the trailer sheet just behind the original copy and just in front of the first sheet of carbon paper. You notice it will extend beyond the carbon pack. Now, as you continue typing down the page, this trailer sheet will hold the original copy firm, and you can type right down to the very bottom line on the page. As I lift the carbon pack out of the typewriter, you'll notice I'm using my paper release key, and that the trailer sheet is automatically pulled free, so I can set it aside. As we learned a moment ago, proper care of carbon paper is important, so I immediately will pull my carbon paper free and put it back in the folder. Has that ever happened to you? You just get the carbon paper put away and you notice that you've forgotten to type in a correction where you made an erasure? Well, if it does, rather than putting each sheet back in the typewriter individually, why don't you try it like this? Put all of the copies back in the typewriter and bring them up into typing position so that you're going to type in the correct letter on the original copy, and then type it in. And now, move the paper release forward, and while carefully holding the pack in place, slip the original copy out of the typewriter. Then position the second copy so you can type in a correction, and likewise, hold the pack in place and slip the second copy out of the typewriter. Likewise, the third and the fourth, and as many copies as you may have. Using this technique will save you a lot of time and effort. When we have to type on a very small piece of paper, it can be frustrating to have it tip or twist in the typewriter. But let me solve that problem for you in this way. Take a single sheet of paper and fold it in half, being careful that the corners are folded squarely. Crease it in the center of the page, and then fold the top half back toward you, leaving about 1/4 of an inch of pleat. Now we have a pleat sheet that looks like this. Put this in the typewriter and bring the pleat to just a little above typing position. Now take those difficult to type on cards drop them in the pleats, and simply back them down into typing position. I think you can see now that as you type on this card, it will be held firmly in position, and it can't tip or twist in the typewriter. Another problem that can come up happens when you complete some typewritten work and then you staple it, only to find out that as you look through the pages, there's an error back here on page 3. Immediately, the staple becomes a problem, because if you take the staple out, then you have to try to put it back in through the same holes. It's simple to solve that problem if you'll do it like this. Take the page that needs to be corrected, and after you've made the erasure, insert the bottom of that page in the same type of pleat sheet that we already have in the typewriter. Now it's simply a matter of, until you bring it to typing position, type in the correction. So there, what might have been a problem has already been solved. Keep this pleat sheet handy. I think you'll see frequent occasion to use it. We often have occasion to type a number of envelopes. I'm sure that you have occasion to type index cards or file cards, and perhaps you put them one by one in the typewriter, type on them, take them out and set them aside and pick up the next one with a lot of extra hand and arm motion. Let me show you a faster method. Take the first envelope and with the copy guide back, insert it in the typewriter and bring it around to normal typing position. Type the name and address on the envelope, but then rather than taking it out of the typewriter, back it down in the typewriter until about 1 inch of it still shows. Now take the second envelope and position it behind the first and back it down into typing position. When you're through with that one, back it down till about 1 inch of it shows and insert the next envelope. Notice how quickly and automatically each envelope comes into the correct typing position. And as I insert them, notice how they accumulate at the back of the typewriter in the same sequence in which they were typed. I think you will agree that this technique of typing envelopes a handful at a time is a lot faster than typing them individually. When we have occasion to draw lines on a typewriter, perhaps most of us use the underscore, whether we're using a manual typewriter or an electric. But let me show you a method that is faster, it's easier, and more accurate. And it only uses a ballpoint pen and your typewriter. Now, on every typewriter, there's a place where a typist can hold a ballpoint pen against the paper while she moves the carriage. She holds the ballpoint pen firmly in her right hand, and with the left hand, she reaches over and releases the carriage release lever and lets the carriage ride to the left. The pen has drawn a line on the paper. Now, after lifting the pen slightly, she returns the carriage with her left hand, and with the pen again on the paper, she releases the carriage and lets it ride to the left. She repeats this process for as many lines as she wants to draw on the page. If you have occasion to make vertical lines, simply release the line finder lever by pulling it forward. This will take the click out of moving the platen. And with this in that position, simply roll the platen and you will draw straight, smooth lines vertically on the paper. So move the carriage to the left for drawing horizontal lines and roll the platen for drawing vertical lines. To show you how effective this technique can be, let me show you these examples. In the upper right, we have a club announcement. Notice the boxes. And over on the left, a typical form. And down here at the bottom, a graph. Now you may wonder how she drew those diagonal lines. She simply tipped the paper as it was in the typewriter. All the lines on these forms were drawn with a ballpoint pen while the material was still in the typewriter. The technique of drawing lines with a ballpoint pen works especially well on stencils and other duplicating masters. The typing techniques that I have shown you today will still apply even as typewriters improve. Earlier in this program, I said I was going to show you the latest development in typewriter engineering, and this is it. The first thing you'll notice about this typewriter is that as I type, there is no carriage movement. And as you look further, you will notice that there are no moving type bars. On this typewriter, all of the alphabetic and numeric characters are located on a single typing element that moves back and forth across the page. No longer are you limited to a single type style on this typewriter. If you want to change type style for emphasis or variety, simply lift out the typing element and select one of several others. And in an instant, you have changed type style. Changing ribbons on this typewriter is easy. When you want to change the ribbon, to put on a new one or to change colors, simply lift out the ribbon cartridge, set it aside, and insert. Throughout this program, I have demonstrated to you practical typing techniques that will help you be a more effective typist. And thoughtfully, the manufacturer of every typewriter has prepared a manual on proper care and cleaning, on how to change the ribbon, on special features of your typewriter, and on typing tips. Keep your manual handy as a reference to good typing. Complete knowledge of your typewriter, and by using the typing techniques that I've shown you here today, you will know that you are always right at your typewriter.